Happy Friday. Happy Freya's Day. It's absolutely gorgeous today. I decided to film here in front of the fence. There's water right on the other side of this fence, but I decided to stop and film here for this rune video to make a point and to talk a little bit about Saturn and boundaries before I pull runes. So Saturn being in retrograde, by the way, we just had the solar eclipse yesterday, but Saturn being in retrograde asks us to go back and rather than start new things, to refine and maybe restructure, or it's a re it's a re prefix kind of time. So the point of the fence is to remind us to look at boundaries. Boundaries are important. Boundaries are necessary. Without boundaries, we'd all be Pisces if we didn't have any boundaries, but we can't all be Pisces. So boundaries are necessary because they provide safety and enclosure where there otherwise might not be. So my question is to you to consider, where do you push past your own boundaries? Is it healthy to always do so? So sometimes, yes. As soon as I said that, as soon as I asked, where do you push past your own boundaries, I actually pictured in my head actually yoga and working out in general, but where you go to a point where you think you've hit your boundary or your limit, and you're actually able to push much further than that. And in that example, then yes, it's good to push past those boundaries and those limits with yourself. Sometimes we put up limits for ourselves that are arbitrary or are based on past hurts, past trauma, right? And in those cases, it's good to revisit those and look at those and ask ourselves if those walls really serve us or if they ultimately hold us back. And then it's good to look at what boundaries we push past or allow others to push us past that are there for our safety. Or maybe not even safety, maybe that's not quite the right word. Maybe it's even just for a sense of internal security or whatever. I'm not thinking of a specific example right now, so take it how it resonates and how it works for you. Hello, Bumblebee. We're still in Gemini season right now, but we're moving into Cancer season really quickly, and that is a very feels heavy, emotion heavy season. Cancer is all about our deepest emotions, our secret desires, our ancestral wounds and gifts, not just wounds. Sorry, I'm sitting on something with thorns. Oh, interesting. This is supposed to be a rune video, but I'm talking a lot about astrology today, so there you have it. Cancer represents in our personal charts the area of life that is the furthest down, the furthest underground, you could say, our roots. It's the lowest point in the chart, right? If you look at it as a circle, it's the lowest point in the chart. It represents the base of our emotional and like the base of our like emotional makeup, you could say. And I kind of laughed because I realized I was sitting on something a little bit thorny because if there is something there, something that's thorny, something that is bothering you underneath the surface, everything you try to do after that point of the fourth house or Cancer, everything you try to do in your public life, everything you try to do with relationships, with your friend group, it will, unless there's a solid foundation there where Cancer is, unless there is, and foundation is a Saturnian thing, but unless you've dealt with whatever it is that's underneath there, the rest of it will not be built on anything solid and will not be lasting. So how does this relate to boundaries? Good question. I'm kind of freestyling here. If you have a weak fourth house, or if Cancer is somehow maligned in your chart, so to generalize, you have some issues regarding intimacy, some traumas from early in life, or what have you, which pretty much everybody does. Nobody really escapes childhood unscathed. Often those types of people have weak boundaries. Maybe they were taught to have weak boundaries. Maybe they were pushed past their own boundaries, or told that they weren't allowed to have boundaries. This is the type of stuff that Saturn in retrograde is asking us to look at. It's not just general life organization, it's all kinds of foundations, all kinds of boundary work. In the physical 3D mundane realm, it might come out as, before we really move on to the next project, we really have to maintain and repair this fence. Otherwise, the deer are going to eat all of our berry bushes. Real life example, right? It could be, before I start this new relationship or really dive into some new intimate thing, I really need to ensure that my foundation is in order, my health is in order, my issues, my personal issues around intimacy have at least been looked at and begun to be healed, and that I know and I'm clear about what my boundaries actually are. Because if you're not clear about your boundaries, well, it's pretty easy to push past them, right? And I want to be clear about what boundaries are exactly. So a boundary is not, you can't do this. That's not a boundary. That's controlling somebody else. A boundary is, this is my limit. There are consequences for crossing my limit. But also, I am in control of me, and I will determine what that limit is, number one, but also I'm not going to push myself past that exact limit. So that's super vague. So I'll give an example. Hello, butterfly. Um, ADD. I don't have ADD, but so you're really excited about talking to somebody, and it can come out as like, say you go on a first date or whatever. Yeah, let's stick with that example. You go on a first date, and then the very next day, or even later that night, you're messaging them, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And please don't take like that as a judgment if that is something that you do. So maybe you need to be clear about what your boundary is about how much you're going to communicate with this new person, and how intimately or deeply you're going to communicate with this person. So that's where your own boundaries need to come in. So often there's a tendency for people to overshare and get way too deep, way too fast, or not share enough, hold themselves back. And both of those examples are kind of extremes on the like scale of boundaries in general. How else could this come out? It could come out as yeah, if you have weak boundaries within yourself, it could come out as asking about super intimate details really early on, like tell me about your deepest childhood wounding, or or things like that. And it's hard for some people like myself to not go into stuff like that, because I have a habit of kind of psychoanalyzing people, and I gotta stop. I gotta stop doing that. But I don't know. I like to know what makes people tick. But how else could that come out? It's a really good example. A really a really simple example that I can think of off the top of my head is somebody offering you something, and you refusing, and then them pushing, and then you accepting. So the boundary violation there isn't necessarily them pushing. I mean, it is. They are violating a boundary that you put down, saying no. But the real violation comes when you accept, you cross your own boundary. So this comes out a lot with peer pressure and addiction. Actually, peer pressure, that's a great talk about right now with the jabby jab. So if you say no and someone pushes you, how do you resolve that particular boundary violation? Well, you may need to push back or defend the boundary or remove yourself from the conversation or the situation, or change the topic. Just a small example. Yeah. Yeah. And people that push you past the point where you've said no, I mean, are they really your friends? The answer is no, they're not. And yeah, and the other thing, back to the example of intimacy. You can tell when someone has issues with their own boundaries when they offer up too much too quickly. And when they don't offer anything at all. So the important thing is to try and strike a balance between the two, to offer little bits, see how it's received, and test the waters in regards to how safe is it actually to speak to this person about this stuff. How do they take this information? How do they use this information? And in that way, ow, more thorns. Ooh, I think those are rose bushes. Rose or raspberry. Anyway, this is important. This is really important. It's important to build these kinds of things slowly over time. And building slowly over time, those are 3 key words of Saturn. Oh, Saturn. Saturn, Saturn, Saturn. I'm a Capricorn rising and a Capricorn moon, so I'm ruled by Saturn. Joy. And ironically, I have struggled significantly with weak boundaries. But yeah, so that's a big lesson for me in this lifetime, is strengthening my own boundaries without becoming controlling with other people, and honoring my own boundaries. And honestly, when I honor my own boundaries and I stick to my guns, I always feel better. And when I give in and I allow someone to push past my boundaries, I always feel like shit. It never makes me feel good. Especially if it has to do with intimacy or substances. So I am an addict. I've been sober for 2 years. Fuck yeah. But yeah, that was a huge area that I struggled with. It's like, no, I actually really don't want to do that, but then I would, and then I would obviously feel like shit, or it wouldn't even be a good time. Every time. Anyway, so those are my thoughts. Saturn and boundaries. And this is already kind of long, so I'm going to make a separate video for my runes. Yeah, have a good weekend. Peace.